A new era, a new era, already off to a great start. A new era of Arizona Cardinals football is upon us with general manager Monti Ossenfort taking the reins, officially announced as the Cardinals' newest general manager on Tuesday. The Cardinals also continue to search for the newest head coach after firing Cliff Kingsbury after 4 years of service. We're going to break it all down here on the All Cardinals podcast. For Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie, Druin. Thank you so much, however you may be, wherever you may be listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go ahead and find out where we work at allcardinals.com. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. Follow Richie on Twitter at RichieBrads36. Richie, before we even dive into football, give me your top Girl Scout cookie because I cannot stop shoveling them in my mouth.
Tag-alongs. And it's
Okay.
funny you mentioned that.
Perfect.
I literally had Girl Scouts stop outside of my house like earlier this week. And like I was on the phone and like I looked through my little peek hole and I was like, I need to call you back.
Yeah.
I gotta get some Girl Scout cookies.
So tag-alongs is definitely my favorite. I've put a hurting on the Adventurefuls. They're like a brownie, like caramel mix, super crazy.
Okay.
And then also got to show some love to Samoas as well. I've always had kind of an inkling for them. But Girl Scout cookie season is upon us, and so is the season to find the Arizona Cardinals' newest head coach. But before they did that, they wanted to go and find a new general manager, and they indeed did do that. Monti Ossenfort, your new Cardinals general manager. Richie, before we even dive into Ossenfort, I thought it was interesting because reportedly Ian Cunningham, the Bears' assistant general manager, turned down the initial job offer Arizona wanted. So Ossenfort wasn't necessarily their first choice whenever it came to GM, but it might be the right choice, question mark?
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, this is a guy that people have said is a highly respected personnel member across the league. Ossenfort was definitely somebody that wasn't necessarily on our radar, but when they made the hire, it felt like a lot of people kind of came out and they were like, you know what, good for them. Like, this is a good decision, this, that, and the other. He's been in the league for ever and ever and ever. I mean, he was with the New England Patriots for God knows how long. He was, for what it's worth, a part of 4 Super Bowl champion teams with them. He was with Tennessee when Vrabel got there and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's a younger guy too. He's only 44 years old. So, I mean, he definitely has a nice little repertoire to him, which includes, again, a lot of people saying that this is a good hire. This is a good young guy. They should be excited. And a little bit of he's been there. He's worked with some really highly respected guys. It's hard to work for New England from 2006 to 2020, I said, and not be a respected guy when you're with Belichick for that long. So I like the hire. No, it wasn't the hire that everyone was anticipating, but I feel like this is a good decision for Arizona.
Yeah, and the Ossenfort hire was described to me by a source as surprising, at least for people around the National Football League. People did not expect Ossenfort to get this job. I think it's just plain and simple. But I think something we need to remember is that, like, ultimately, it doesn't matter who the sexy candidate is. It doesn't matter who the hot name is at that time. Michael Bidwell's job is to get the right people in place to turn this franchise around. And a lot of people seem to think very, very highly of Ossenfort. I think after he spoke both at his press conference and to media members afterwards, I walked away very impressed. It seems like there's going to be a heavy emphasis on scouting, and I think that's something the Cardinals desperately need, and I think that will come into play with the number 3 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, you look at his background a little bit. You already dove into it a tad. Spent a lot of time in New England, 4 Super Bowls there. Was the director of player personnel for Tennessee. They won. Not one. They went to the playoffs 2 out of 3 years he was there under his guidance. And I feel like the Titans had a pretty solid roster constructed during his tenure there. Obviously, this year didn't necessarily pan out like they thought it would. And there have been some people that have brought up the fact that if he was so good, why would the Titans have not wanted to hire him for the inside Tennessee job? I think that same logic can be applied to Arizona. If Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris were so coveted just in terms of their respective roles, why didn't the Cardinals hire them? I think it boils down to just wanting to get a fresh perspective. Ossenfort probably just wasn't the guy to be in Tennessee, but he certainly got his work cut out for him here in Arizona. I mean, over 30 free agents are about to hit the market. He still got to find a head coach. Like we already talked about, a very, very big draft coming up. I mean, there's a lot on this dude's plate immediately off the bat.
You could not set him up for a bigger year one test than what the Cardinals are placing for him. This is a losing franchise that doesn't have a lot of winning seasons under their belt, let alone playoff success, let alone championships or anything like that. They've got very few pieces on this team right now that are long term and are also like blue chip caliber. It's Kyler Murray, and that's about it. Like, there's quality players. I stand by, I've said this before. This is a quality team. However, I was talking to our good friend Connor off air. Here's the thing. When I look at some of the best teams in the NFL, there are young cornerstones littered throughout. When I look at the Cardinals, it's Kyler Murray, maybe Hollywood, but he's a free agent after 2023, and not a lot of youth. It's a lot of veteran players. And that's what is separating the Cardinals from other teams, is Steve Keim wasn't able to draft enough young, talented players to sustain a roster for the long period of time. This is where Ossenfort needs to make a difference, is he needs to be able to draft, develop, stash, and make it so that this team goes from one of the oldest rosters to one of the youngest rosters. This is going to be a massive transitional phase for the Cardinals. If they want to find more success, it's not about paying everyone, because quite frankly, if I'm the Cardinals and I'm Ossenfort, I'm probably not going to be extending too many of my guys, because I would rather just get younger, capitalize on those compensatory picks, and understand that this isn't a one-year project. This is probably 2, maybe 3 years in the making of getting back on the right track. It's a massive roster overhaul the team is going to need to go through to get younger, get talented. More on that.
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Great theme, great teams. Great teams build themselves through the NFL draft. Rarely do you see a team kind of throw all their chips into the middle of the table and acquire guys via free agency or via trade and it really work out. I mean, we saw the Rams do that just last year, but I mean, you kind of look at how they're set up for the future. Yeah, they got a Super Bowl out of it, but like how I almost think that was a flash in the pan. Like that cannot be easily replicated again. And so to build long-term sustained success in the National Football League is to draft and develop players extremely well. And like you pointed out, that's just something Steve Keim has not done or did not do during his tenure with the Arizona Cardinals. And you look at some of the key players they brought in. Think about it. DeAndre Hopkins, Rodney Hudson, J.J. Watt, and the AJ Green, like all of these guys were brought in via free agency or through trading, right? Like very, very rarely has Steve Keim been able to kind of put himself on a pedestal and say, yeah, we drafted this guy, we developed this guy. Here you go. Here's why we should be a successful team. Here's why I should be the guy moving forward. And I think it's really interesting whenever people throw out the Patriot way, right? Like what exactly is the Patriot way? It's going into details. It's leaving no stone unturned. It's making sure you get the absolute best and everybody ensures they know their role. And Richie, I feel like everybody and their mother who's ever coughed alongside Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft has somehow gotten an opportunity in the NFL. And like the Patriot way has just never been able to be easily replicated. I know a lot of people kind of have that concern here where, Ossenfort's going to come from a team like New England and Tennessee as well, but mostly bring those values from New England and try and steal them here. And historically speaking, it just hasn't worked out. I don't really share those concerns. Like Ossenfort, listening to him speak, it sounds like he's going to try to take a little bit of everything. He's not going to try to reinvent the wheel here in Arizona. And I think Cardinals fans should be really excited about that.
I think the problem that we run into when we talk about replicating the New England Patriots way and stuff like that is that you just can't replicate that kind of stuff because it's Bill Belichick. There is no replicating the greatest coach in NFL history, or at least a top 2, top 3 in a worst case scenario kind of guy. What you need to do is take some of the attributes of it, combine it into a culture that you want to create and move forward. You cannot recreate something without having the core of what it takes to be that. Unless Bill Belichick becomes the Arizona Cardinals head coach, you're not recreating the Patriots way with the Arizona Cardinals. Instead, like you said, and what Ossenfort appears to be all about is he wants to take some of what he's learned, create a new culture, and establish himself. He wants to trailblaze his own path. He wants it to eventually be the Arizona Cardinals way. We don't want to just constantly have our success tied to previous installments of where we were in our career.
Mhm.
Rather, we want to be able to set ourselves apart. So for Ossenfort, props to him for not wanting to recreate something that has been tried to be recreated timeless times before and never seemingly to work out. This is a new chapter for the Arizona Cardinals. It's also a new chapter for Monti Ossenfort. So here's hoping that he can take what he's learned at his different positions with New England, with Tennessee, and be able to just create his own culture and hopefully, fingers crossed, his own dynasty with Arizona.
Yeah, those are lofty expectations nonetheless. But if you're not trying to build a dynasty, don't take this job. I
Exactly.
think that should be the absolute shoot for the moon, worst case scenario things that
You
you
land
want to
among the
build.
stars.
That's right. That's right. Before I exit out of this graphic, I have to point this out. Do you think Monty looks like the dude on the cover of the Hitman video game?
He absolutely does. I thought you were going to ask me if he looks tall. I was going to say I think it's just the other guy looking really short, but
Yeah, it honestly might be kind of like a combination of both. So,
he absolutely looks like the Hitman from the Hitman games.
okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
I
I
don't know
saw
his
the
name.
internet went crazy on that, and I'm like, you know what? Like, he actually kind of does. So I think props to whoever initially saw that and decided to just blow it up on Twitter. Shout out to you. Ossenfort, his first order of business, finding a new head coach, which is something that 4 other teams in the NFL are trying to do currently. And there's also 10 offensive coordinator openings as well. So a lot of movement set to happen in the NFL sooner rather than later. Obviously, as we go deeper into playoffs, more guys will become available to freely interview X, Y, and Z, all that good stuff. So far we have about 7 potential candidates for the Cardinals. We've already seen Vance Joseph and Frank Reich interview. I believe this week the likes of D'Amico Ryans and Aaron Glenn are set to interview with the Cardinals as well. There's obviously interest for Brian Flores and a couple of other names I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. But the list is kind of like molding. It's kind of like setting in for itself, right? So the challenge I wanted to have for you and I is to come up with 3 realistic head coaching candidates for us to kind of go over. So without further ado, I would love for you to go first. I'm going to bring the graphic up right now. And just in terms of being realistic for what the Cardinals will probably do, take it away.
Yeah, so starting off with Vance Joseph, I feel like this is just the hire that makes too much sense for it not to happen. Not that it's the right decision, because this is certainly not the way I would go, but it feels like all signs point to Lauderdale here. And Vance Joseph is definitely somebody who's well respected in that locker room. The players like him. He's a player's coach. He's been there for a long, long time now at this point, like 4 or 5 seasons. So it makes sense that if you're going to stay in-house, that you would want to go with a Vance Joseph over any of the other options that the Cardinals might have. Not that there are really any great head coaching candidates on the current staff, but Vance Joseph, I feel like, makes the most sense for this job. Again, this isn't the hire I would make. In fact, the hire I would make is not in my top 3 here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. D'Amico Ryans is a really, really good option for me, though. I really love a lot of what he brings to the table for you. He's young, he's intuitive, he's smart, he's got a lot of success in a very short amount of time. Could he be a flash in the pan? Absolutely. But I look at D'Amico Ryans and I sit here and I'm like, he's making household names out of people that you've never heard of. Talana Hufanga, the safety from USC. I feel like I butchered his name. My apologies if
All
a
pro.
49ers fan. Yeah, he's an all-pro this year. Nobody knew who he was coming into this year. He is an all-pro. And part of that is because he's a very, very talented player. If you watch him play this year, yeah, he's one of the 5 best safeties in football. But it also helps when you have D'Amico Ryans calling the plays and getting the most out of you. Javarius Ward, who's bounced around between the Chiefs and the Niners, is a quality player. He was playing terrific this year because of the scheme. And it feels like D'Amico Ryans is just getting the most out of everyone. Dre Greenlaw, outstanding player. Fred Warner, outstanding player. Nick Bosa, one of the defensive player of the year frontrunners, if not the absolute heavyweight favorite for it. DeMeco Ryans is getting the most out of these guys. And I'm not discrediting the players, but it is so important to have the right play callers in place. And when you have that in place, you have unbelievable success like the Niners have had. No offense to Brock Purdy here at all. The Niners defense is what's going to win them a Super Bowl if they are able to get to that point. And DeMeco Ryans is the reason why. Finally, Brian Flores closes out my top three. I have family that would hate this hire. I would love it. And here's why. Flores is a competitor. I understand that the team wanted to lose. I don't think that Flores was ever on board with personally losing those games for Miami the way that the team was telling him to tank. I think that Flores has an ego to him, but in a very good way. Not in a I'm gonna run the show and blow the whole thing up way. In the way of like, I know that I'm good enough to be a head coach, and here's why. And he went to Pittsburgh this year and was able to get quite a bit out of a beat up roster because TJ Watt missed the vast majority of the year. In his place, Alex Highsmith goes on and has double-digit sacks. Probably should have been a Pro Bowler. Minka Fitzpatrick, another first-team All-Pro year out of him. They got plenty of really good contributions from throughout the team, in spite of the fact that it was a team that, yes, they finished 9-8, but they were still able to overachieve. And I think Brian Flores was a huge part of that defensive success this year without TJ Watt and getting some guys back on track too. Devin Bush was able to kind of resurrect his career from, man, is this guy even going to be a Steeler in 2023 to maybe we bring him back kind of thing. Brian Flores would be a really good hire in my opinion. I think that he would be able to get the most out of these guys. I think he's a player's coach. I think that he's a locker room, rally the troops kind of guy. And I think that's what the Cardinals need right now is they need a rah-rah guy. And I think Brian Flores can be that guy.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue into my top three because Brian Flores is actually number one on my list. There's a very common theme you're seeing with the Arizona Cardinals in their pursuit for a new head coach. Defensive side of the ball, culture change, right? Maximizing the talent you have on the roster. That was Kingsbury's biggest fault, right? I mean, we can talk about Cliff Kingsbury and his shortcomings all day long. At the end of the day, he was fired because he did not maximize the 53 players on his active roster. You look at what Brian Flores did in Miami with a pretty much less talented team than what the Cardinals could possibly have going into 2023. And he damn near turned them into a playoff team. Now, granted, he was fired over a lot of off-the-field stuff that we're really not going to get into on this podcast, at least today. Case in point being, he demands respect everywhere he goes. He commands it. The players respect him. They love playing for him. And like you said, he can coach a football team. If you want to change the culture in Arizona, Brian Flores is your guy. Now, granted, there was a lot of stuff about him and Tua, the relationship they had or lack thereof. A lot of people worry that they can that can bleed into a potential relationship with Kyler Murray. And it is very important for the head coach and the quarterback to have, be on the same page at very minimum. Look, a lot of people are going to hammer Kyler Murray, rightfully so, not rightfully so, whatever it is. You, especially now that you paid him, you need to get the best out of Kyler Murray. You need somebody to push him. You need somebody to take control of the wheel in Arizona and, just at least make sure the car is moving forward. Brian Flores, at least to me, in terms of realism and the guys they want to hire, is going to be that guy, which kind of shifts into my number two guy, DeMeco Ryans. You've already spent a lot of time talking about him, singing his praises, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But, man, look at the job he's doing in San Francisco. Look at the way he has those guys playing. Look at whenever you watch the 49ers play the Cowboys on Sunday, watch his demeanor on the sideline. He never gets too high. He never gets too low. He knows exactly how to conduct himself. I think he's already had a coach in his mind right now. And it's no shaking a stick at that. He's already got majority, if not all 5 teams interested in him. He's a legitimate head coaching candidate, and I do think he'll get a job somewhere, whether that's Arizona or somewhere else. And that's another culture change. Hopefully bring some of that success from the San Francisco 49ers over to the Arizona Cardinals this year. And then number 3, Frank Reich. This isn't a very popular choice. And with how things ended in Indianapolis and with how the Colts offense looked in Indianapolis, I totally get it. But I need people to remember, with a halfway decent quarterback, this guy was an offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. He clearly knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball. He is the only guy on this list other than Flores who has actual head coaching experience. You bring that with the Super Bowl experience in Philadelphia. He's an offensive guy. And, if you're looking for a head coach, you kind of want him to be an offensive coordinator so you can also maximize Kyler Murray on the field as well. I think Reich makes a lot of sense, but I also get why people are wanting to stay 10 feet away from him at all times. I totally get it. But Reich, for me, at least in terms of realism, he's got to be top 3.
There's something you mentioned, to kind of backtrack real quick, about Brian Flores that I want to touch on. You said, and this is a very important conversation to have, the relationship between him and Tua is something that might worry Cardinal fans. Here's where I'm going to put your worries to rest, Arizona Cardinal fans. The front office, Michael Bidwell, has already stated that Kyler Murray will be part of the vetting process for the next head coach. If Brian Flores and Kyler Murray don't hit it off, Kyler's going to say he doesn't want him. And if the Cardinals proceed to hire Brian Flores in spite of Kyler Murray saying this isn't my guy, there's a problem. There's an organizational problem at that point, which is really bad considering you have a new general manager. So if Flores is hired, you do not have to lose any sleep over him and Kyler Murray bashing heads, at least immediately, because Murray will be part of that vetting process.
No, it can definitely happen a little bit down the road, but especially with like the financial commitment you've already given to Murray, you've already given him the keys to the car just in terms of being the franchise guy. Why would you not get the green light from Murray before you bring on somebody? And I know that sounds ludicrous to a lot of people. I know, when you put it on paper, Kyler Murray helps determine who the next head coach is, isn't exactly the brightest lamp in the room. But dude, like, if you really want to maximize everything possible, look at what happened with him and Cliff last year. There were multiple times where, putting it very nicely, they were not on the same page.
Yep.
Cliff and Kyler, that relationship fractured at the very end of the season. It was very, very obvious. ESPN reported it with just a couple games left to go after Murray already tore his ACL and he was out of the picture. There's a very long road to get Kyler Murray back to 100%, because even whenever he does come back from the ACL tear, it's probably going to take him another full year for him to really regain his track and really regain that speed and agility that makes him so great. They're not going to bring in a guy that he's not going to work with. It's just plain and simple. And exactly like you said, if they do, all on them.
Yep.
All on them.
100%.
So we've wrapped up our top 3 head coaching candidates, but there was somebody we wanted to touch on before we head out today. I can't believe they haven't talked to him. I cannot believe, at least to public knowledge, they have not interviewed Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen. There are rumblings of them potentially interviewing, and I think Ben Johnson is his name, the Eagles defensive coordinator. He's getting a lot of steam, and perhaps rightfully so. And I think that was on the PHNX podcast yesterday. So shout out to Bo Brack and everybody over there at PHNX Cardinals to do really great stuff. For the Cardinals to not at least interview Steichen, and like really quick, no offense to Aaron Glenn, but like being the defensive coordinator of the 32nd ranked team in terms of yards allowed per game and the 3rd worst points per game mark in the NFL, and you're getting a head coach interview over Shane Steichen, the guy who has helped build Jalen Hurts to not exactly what he is right now, but has undoubtedly been a very strong part and played a key role in getting Jalen Hurts to be, or at least in the top half of the quarterback echelon in the NFL. And you're not even going to look at him?
I feel like that's just very what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
Am I being too short-sighted?
No,
Okay.
it's irresponsible. Everyone wants the next Sean McVay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. And I understand that you just tried to do that with Cliff Kingsbury, but if we're being honest, Cliff was never going to be Sean McVay. The dude didn't have a winning record in college at Texas Tech. Writing was on the wall. It was in a best case scenario going to be what you got in 2021. With Steichen, again, young dude, great offensive mind. He's worked with great quarterbacks. He's worked with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. He got Jalen Hurts to take the next step from quality quarterback to MVP candidate. Why on earth are you not trying to marry him and Kyler Murray together? I'm not saying this needs to be the hire. I'm not saying that Shane Steichen absolutely is, like, no questions asked, the next Cardinals head coach, no ifs, ands, or buts, but you need to interview him at the least. You need to be able to see the absolute best options available to you. Right now, they're bargain shopping, Donnie. We're talking about Vance Joseph as one of the best candidates for the job, and it's like, why? He lasted 2 years in Denver, no winning records. Like,
I can tell you why you're not going to like it.
Hit me.
Money.
Absolutely.
Money. They're already on the hook for paying Cliff Kingsbury. I think I did the math. The reported amount he was making per year was around $5.5 million. He's set to be paid through the next 4 or 5 seasons. That's somewhere around like $27.5 million. It's also why we're not seeing Sean Payton anywhere close to being interviewed with the Cardinals, or at least coming close to that, because Payton, on top of the first-round pick compensation at minimum the Saints want for him, is going to demand a $20 million salary annually. You're almost paying that entire salary to Cliff Kingsbury over a course of 4 or 5 years.
It unfortunately is just classic Bidwell. His dad did the same thing. Now he's doing it. At some point, I understand that it is a lot of money. It's money that I can't even fathom, but you're a billionaire. You own a professional franchise that has been nothing but bottom seller losing for the entirety of its lifespan.
Yep.
At some point, something's got to give, something's got to change. You need to be a part of that change. You hire Vance Joseph. I'm sorry. I find it really difficult to buy into the Cardinals at that point. You hire.
See, I don't. I think round 2 for Vance Joseph as a head coach would go better than round 1. If you look at kind of how he was set up in Denver compared to how he would be set up here, right, I think he would have a lot of success. But like the entire point of firing Cliff Kingsbury was to bring in somebody new. And we've heard Michael Bidwell say, as it relates to the general manager search, he wants to cast a net far and wide. We've heard Michael Bidwell say in regards to the head coaching search, he wants to cast a net far and wide. Great. I applaud you for going to interview almost everybody who is reportedly interested in having a head coach job this year. But they have to know something we don't. In order for Steichen to not at least get a look, like you said, you don't have to hire the guy. We're not pounding the table saying Shane Steichen is the answer to every single problem here in Arizona. At least bring him in for an interview, take him out to dinner or something.
Fancy him. Just entertain the option. They're not even doing that.
And dude, at worst case scenario, you get an interview with him and maybe get another idea of what to do with Kyler Murray. I don't know. I'm not a general manager. I'm not a team owner. This helmet is halfway filled with like concrete, so I can't even put it on. I don't have billionaire money. I would like to think I know a little bit of football, but they forget so much football that we can't even fathom how much our knowledge is compared to theirs. It just feels like they're missing a really good opportunity to, at worst, short themselves another candidate on the list. All I'm saying.
I agree. And unfortunately, my tinfoil is in the kitchen, so I can't come up with any crazy conspiracies right now, but the money feels pretty spot on.
No, absolutely. That's what somebody told me. Somebody told me that it was the money because they don't necessarily have the pockets as like the new Denver Broncos ownership does. They kind of want to keep things in house. That's why they're not going after Peyton. All that good stuff. So, I mean, between you and me and the 5 people that listen to this podcast, I've been told that Brian Flores is the leader in the clubhouse, with Vance Joseph kind of as that second option. Right now, it looks like a 2-horse race for that role. So it looks like either one of our 2 candidates, our top 3 candidates, is going to make it. So go us. All right. Closing thoughts. I mean, just a wild head coaching search, which I think will come to an end soon. I think we'll hear maybe a couple second-round interviews here in the next week before they really start to hammer home an option. But, I mean, they need to get going. They need to get going fast.
100% agree. I feel like we've done our end, Donnie, of the analysis and everything. At this point, it's on the franchise to move forward.
No, absolutely. So we've done everything on our end. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the All Cardinals podcast. Follow Richie on Twitter at RichieBrads36. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. Find all of our work at allcardinals.com or si.com/NFL/Cardinals. Maybe the next time we talk to you guys, we'll have a new head coach. Maybe not. Who knows? We don't make the rules. We just kind of follow them sometimes. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.